Recently, I began watching Solo Leveling, which is essentially Dark Souls the anime, where the main character is given the power to level up like in Dark Souls, but real life. And I loved it. I've always been a bit of a self-improvement nerd, so my favorite scenes in most media is the training and then upgrade scene. You know the scene I'm talking about, the one where the main character doubts himself for the whole movie, only to finally have enough of it and give his heart, mind, and soul completely to the training, and then he comes out super jacked and with a mental sharpness like a hawk. And then all of a sudden, what once felt so terrifying now feels exhilarating, because you now know that you can do it. And just because you're afraid of the boss doesn't mean that it's not as afraid of you after seeing this awesome transformation. It's the transformation from prey to predator, that feeling that you've become something more, something better. One medium that achieves this amazingly is horror. In horror movies and games, you're always so terrified in the beginning. So usually the first movie or game is a very scary one, where the hordes of monsters terrify you and you just can't take it. But a subtle change happens in the sequel to these games and movies. Instead of the main character being the hunted one in so many of these, by the second film or game, they are often the one doing all the hunting. Take Half-Life, for example. Gordon Freeman is a scared engineer in the first game, just barely managing to scrape by, but by the second game he's a war hero. This happens to Ash in the Evil Dead franchise, so much to the point that his new TV show is basically an action film. This happens to Guts in Berserk, who starts off terrified of the demons, but eventually makes everyone terrified of him. It also happens to Leon from the second to fourth Resident Evil, and Isaac Clarke from the first to second Dead Space. And this happens to you every time you play a video game. That feeling of taking on a boss that we once thought was impossible and actually beating them is glorious. It reminds you that you can grow, which might be the most enjoyable part about being a human. Except in real life, it's often hard to tell you've grown. Oftentimes it'll just hit you randomly and you'll think, wow, I haven't gotten as angry as I used to in a while. But little did you know you've been upgrading your self-control stat in real life all this time, and have probably gotten 20 level ups and you didn't even know about them until this very moment. And did anyone congratulate you on the level ups, or even tell you that you've upgraded? Of course not, because in real life it's not so easy to notice that stuff. In real life, everything counts, yes. It's just there's no scoreboard there to tell you how good you're doing. The closest thing to a scoreboard would be good parents, who reward you when you do good and punish you when you do bad. But video games aren't like this. They are always good parents. In other words, they reward you. In this society nowadays, there is often no reward at the end of the day other than money. People run around doing menial tasks they don't care about, and they aren't even rewarded for it on the spot. Instead, it takes 2 weeks a lot of the time, which is just a terrible way to give a reward out. It's like if my dog pooped on the poop pad, and instead of rewarding him right then and now, I rewarded him by giving him a snack 2 weeks later. It makes people become disconnected to what the work and money really even means, and if it's even worth pursuing in the first place. But video games aren't like this. Another reason video games are more rewarding than real life is because they allow you to be the hero. So often in real life, you can end up feeling unimportant, like a side character in your own life. And even when you try to take control and upgrade your real life, you can often find that things drag you down, and that in real life, not everyone wants you to realize your dreams. Even friends sometimes can seem as though they are rooting against you. But in games, the worlds are so nice to you. Whenever I get lonely, it makes me happy to travel to a new world where I can be alone and relax, far away from the people and far away from life, because it doesn't feel so lonely in a video game. There's nothing but me and the challenges the game awaits for me. I love level ups the most. That's my favorite part of the game. I have a very simple mind, so for me, seeing numbers go up equals good time. And seeing enemies die fast makes me even happier. Even in multiplayer games, my team can get destroyed, but I'll still be hyped because I got 50,000 healing. The numbers going up is the best part of any gaming experience, and I think if we ever want to enjoy life more, we need to remind ourselves that just because you can't actually see the number doesn't mean that the number and your character level isn't going up by every single one of your actions, because they are. Every time you decide to walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, your character's stamina goes up by 10 points, and you could put a point into your body stat. Every time you meditate, your focus points are going up, and your mind stat gets another point. You are continuously improving yourself and becoming better. It's just a shame that no one is reminding you just how truly great you're doing, like video games do. And I think that the biggest thing that makes video games so much more rewarding than real life is that so often in real life, no matter how hard you work, you might never be complimented on it. You might only get a compliment from your boss once a year on employee review day, and then never receive a kind word again. And that's not right. We need a world more like video games, where people are complimented when they do good, and where jealousy isn't so easily felt, and where people can be happy for others' achievements. A world where people are told every day that they are improving, and to keep on the right path. A world where we don't fear getting fired, but look forward to being promoted. And until we start treating each other and this world as good as video games have treated us all these years, I fear gaming might become a better alternative for purpose than life. But it doesn't have to be this way. I believe gamification is the system of the future. Now that humans have been opening up the answers for how to best motivate us, which in my opinion is clear objectives, clear directions for how to get to them, and big rewards given out upon completion of the task. Now, school is great with the first two of these. The teacher tells you exactly how to do the project, tells you what the problem is and what you're working on, making the objective and how-to clear. The only problem is it does not reward at all. An entire system that's built upon nothing but fear. You don't really get anything in the moment if you succeed. Maybe a compliment, but after the first good grade, the compliments stop as it's now expected. But punishments are thrown out for bad grades relentlessly. At my school, if you were doing bad in class, they gave you detention. So essentially, you were failing in their game and clearly were not getting it and wanting to quit. And their solution to bring you back into the game is by punishing you, which just pushes you further into the hole of feeling stupid. I think the modern day school system has bad game design, and seeing as how they are supposed to level you up past the tutorial phase, this scares me a lot. Often all they do is make people want to quit the game entirely. Maybe it'll make them turn to mods, otherwise known as drugs, to make the subpar experience feel more balanced. But all this does is make the base game harder when you take the mods off. The game of life is the longest running game of all time, and personally it's my favorite. But lately it's been turning more into a looter shooter with a focus on grind for the next product. Whereas it used to be an open world with a focus on meeting new people and seeing cool things. And nowadays we are so into the grind of the products that we never let the grind stop, even if it's just a grind for pointless things, which would be the equivalent of doom scrolling, which is about as useful as grinding for beast bones for an hour in Elden Ring. Not even collecting the souls of the enemies, just their bare bones. Like, TikToks in general can hardly even be called art. They're just bare, meatless bones. They serve as content for nothing more than to keep the illusion of a useful grind going. They are movies as sad offspring, their conversations as mutilated corpse. And with so many of us unable to handle a video longer than a minute, how could we ever expect to love someone for a lifetime? Or to even have enough quiet time alone in our head so that we can talk to ourselves and actually get to know who we are without having to run through life like chicken with our heads cut off. Life's no fun if you're always wondering who you are. And as soon as you actually start to answer that question of your existence, or who and what you are that's been burning in your heart since the moment of your birth, you swipe, and the next video starts. Literally the second you're about to ask yourself the question, the next video starts. And you forget that you were even thinking in the first place, before you get sucked back into the endless grind. They raise the boss's healths of the enemies, but never actually change their moveset in looter shooters, which is the equivalent in the real world to quarterly targets that schools and workplaces use to constantly raise the target without actually changing anything about the way the game plays. This is deplorable, but it doesn't need to be this way. The only reason we care about that new shiny loot is because they constantly tell us that if we had it, we would be so much cooler, but it's just not true. Andrew Tate, for example, was an inspiration to me for a while. Yeah, I know, throw your tomatoes at me, I was young, but over time, I realized that he wasn't even really a person, as much as he was a script to get things. Everything he did to look cool and to get girls, all the while preaching about how much he loved God. Which, by the way, is one of my biggest pet peeves, when those red pillars who talk about nothing but women and money start preaching about how they love God so much and they were chosen by him. Like, my guy, those are literally both deadly sins, but I guess you do you. Anyways, this realization came when I was watching an Andrew Tate video, and he started trashing on people who didn't have a Bugatti. And obviously, I felt broke for not having a Bugatti. But then I realized I never wanted a Bugatti. I've never really been into cars at all, and before Andrew started making fun of me for not having one, I was perfectly happy with my Nissan Rogue. In fact, I was happier with my Nissan Rogue than I was when I was aspiring for the Bugatti. I wondered, how could this be? I wanted to be cool, right? Yes, of course I did. But owning a Bugatti isn't what I thought was cool. I'm a nerd. I think it's cool to do an Elden Ring no-death run with nothing but fist weapons. And Andrew didn't. I'm not Andrew Tate. So when Andrew Tate said playing video games was nerdy shit and pointless, I finally realized I felt the same way about striving for a Bugatti. We were different people, and if he wanted to play that game, then good for him. But personally, I dream of an open world, with quests and friends, and new experiences. And from now on, I'm gonna live my life like that, because you can never beat the game that you want to play if you don't try. And even though death scares me, I know it's going to be satisfying reaching that final cutscene before the TV goes black.